Hello everyone! Welcome to my presentation on the Balance Scorecard, how to use it as a strategic tool, and a complete example shown by the example of a cookie company. This is going to be a complete example of a Balance Scorecard, from the mission to the vision to the strategic projects to the KPI. There is a few misconceptions and misunderstandings about the Balance Scorecard. The one basic thing that almost everybody gets is that it may not be smart to only look at the financial numbers. Because if you only look at the financial numbers, in many processes you come too late, because the finances are at the end of the process. And you should observe the process before that to make sure that later the finances are in order and are in your favor. But if you look only at the finances, you're probably not going to be in a good place. So the first idea that many people understood was, do not only look at the finances, look at other factors as well. So that's where the term balanced scorecard comes in. It's not just the financials, it's other things as well. On the one hand, which is also true, that if you look only at the finances in your business, you probably won't have a business for long. But if you never look at the finances, you're probably not going to have a business for long. Yet, the other part of the Balance Scorecard is the approach. And this is something that many people don't understand, which I myself didn't understand when I started this. The concept of the Balance Scorecard, and that's why the name is not so super great, is not just the scorecard. What is much more important is what comes before the scorecard. And this is you can make it into a very substantial tool if you understand how to use it, how you look at the process before the reports. That's the much more important part. And I liken this to two popular sorts of German cars. One is the so-called Trabant, as we call it Trabi, that was built in socialist East Germany while it still existed. And it's arguably one of the worst car ever built. You'd think the British Rover was bad, and it was, but I think the Trabi was probably worse. Well, in East Germany you couldn't go far anyway, you were not allowed to go very far, so yeah, I guess it was sufficient. And the other German car is the Porsche 6-cylinder, which is very reliable, very durable. I think I read that 2/3 of all Porsches built since 1960 are still running. So, which one you want? The Trabi or the Porsche? The Trabi version, so to speak, is only looking at the scorecard and only looking at the report. You know, it's not bad to have a balanced scorecard with several different KPIs. But it's nowhere nearly as powerful as employing and operating and using the whole process. And that's more like the Porsche. When Kaplan and Norton made up the concept for the Balance Scorecard, they were very clear about this. This is not just about the report. This is mostly about the strategic process that happens before the report. They were very clear about that. There was a study in 2003, which is from where I'm speaking now is 19 years ago. But I'm not sure how much it has improved. Yeah, well, from what I can see, it has improved a bit. That at least in the early 2000s, many companies did not use KPI oriented on their own strategic processes. After that, it became a bit better. So more and more businesses are learning to use the balanced scorecard and the KPI within a bigger strategic process, rather than just a piece of paper or a multicolored screen with nice graphs and graphics. So let's go and build the Porsche, shall we? Now, the idea is that a lot of stuff has to happen before the money comes in. For example, you need customers, right? Yeah, right. We need customers. And better we have satisfied customers. Better we have customers who come back for repeat business, right? Okay, in order for the customers to be satisfied, we need people who actually satisfy them with products and services. So today's good processes are tomorrow's satisfied customers. And today's satisfied customers are tomorrow's revenue, margin, and profit, if we play our cards right. In general, long-term thinking, the long-term approach, almost always, not absolutely always, but almost always beats the short-term approach. Long-term thinking, long-term relationship development, in almost all cases brings you better, more mature and juicier fruit than the short-term approach. So I have customers now that I've had for 20 years. And it's very satisfying to work together, get to know each other better, and have a better exchange. Exchanging better services, better products. So I prefer long-term relationships over short-term. Some very smart person said, impatient people feel attracted to money, but money feels attracted to patient people. That's another argument for the long-term approach.
Where the process begins is the vision and the mission. Some people say the vision is the purpose of the company and the mission is the midterm strategic goal. Other people put it the other way around. You will find both ways in different books and different presentations. I'm not really hung up either way. I think the vision as the basic company's purpose and the mission as a roughly 3-year goal makes sense. But if you don't agree, use it the other way around. The correct order to work this is to have your strategic goals first, make those into strategic sub-goals and projects, and from then you develop the KPI. You do not start with the KPI, and absolutely you do not reverse the order.
The way it is unfortunately often done is that the boss says, hey, make some balanced KPI, intern. The intern asks, yeah, what balanced KPI? I don't know, look something up in a book. And that doesn't make too much sense. I mean, it's not completely worthless if you have a smart intern who picks some KPI that are meaningful for your business and that, makes sense. It is not completely useless. It's not nothing. But it is maybe, if it's done very well, at best 5% of what you can do with this. When you have identified your midterm goal, you look at it through between 4 and 7 different lenses. In most cases it will be 4 or 5 lenses. One lens is the customer lens. So what is important to the customers? What comes to mind about our customers looking at our midterm goal? What internal processes do we need in our company to make that midterm goal happen? What and who do we need to develop to make that happen? And finally, those people who have invested the money, what are they looking at? In most cases, it will be the business people themselves who invested the money, and most business people prefer to have a profit over a loss. So they look at the midterm goal through that lens as well. One concept that I often think about is what's called the ecosystem. I say businesses are relationship networks within bigger relationship networks. And there is an ecosystem in which you operate. Your industry developed and other industries developed around it. And because of that, yet other industries developed. Like, for example, I talked to a lady who makes high-price female clothing, but she has it made in Poland. And I asked her, why not Germany? Poland right now in 2022 is not even cheaper than Germany. And she said, well, you don't have the qualified labor in Germany, and you have almost no manufacturers that deliver the pre-products to you. And in Poland I have the whole ecosystem in which I can operate. And there are many other things, like Germany is big on engineering because we have an engineering ecosystem. We have good enough, still, good enough education for engineers, and we have many machine builders who build parts for other machine builders, so there is an ecosystem. The ecosystem is one lens you can look through. Where am I in my own ecosystem? Everybody wants to be a tiger. You know, most people want to be a tiger. Few people want to be an ant. And even fewer people want to be the gazelle. The thing is, there's an ecosystem. Try to put 50 tigers into a hall with no gazelles. The mood is going to get tense very quickly. And you can have a very good existence as a gazelle beside a tiger if you play your cards right. And if you play your cards right, you will not only survive, you will even benefit from the tiger. So, look, who are you in the ecosystem? Where are we in the ecosystem? Another angle is employees. With many businesses, it is very important to keep key employees on board. And fluctuation, depending on the business. There are businesses where fluctuation is actually cheaper than keeping people in the long term, but those are exceptions. Most businesses, it is more profitable and better for everyone when employees stay on board for a long time. What else? Do we have to train our employees? Are there certain skills that they have in abundance that we can use? Are there certain skills we should train them for? Is there anything they should learn? Are there any possibilities of networking with employees from other companies in a meaningful way that is beneficial for all parties? In some industries, supplier management is crucial, particularly in plane construction and car manufacturing, as we have a lot of here in Germany. The ecosystem of the suppliers is very, very important, and you need to have good relationships with them and really good communication. In other businesses, that is not so much at the forefront, but there's also no harm in having good relationships with your suppliers. Now here's a potential strategic midterm goal. We make the best chocolate cookies on the East Coast. Well, you know, best, what does that mean? Let's say it means the ones that the customers like the best. From that strategic goal, we develop our strategic processes. And with the processes, you can design KPIs, which either measure the process or the result of the process. Sometimes it's good to monitor the process, mostly in regard to, is it actually being done? Are people actually executing? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And can we possibly measure the quality of the execution? And we can also measure the results of the process. Both things are useful. In most cases, in practice, I would say that measuring the process itself is mostly a temporary thing. So people develop the consciousness for the process and realize how important and how central it is to the strategic goal. First, we are going to put on the lens of the customer perspective. Why? The customers are probably the most important part of the whole business. They pay us. They pay our people, they pay our process. Without customers, not much happening. So strategic sub-goal number 1 is, in the customer perspective, to increase customer satisfaction to 8.9 out of 10. You will probably never get to 10 out of 10 because some people just don't want to like what you have. This joke is going around that people who give 1-star reviews on Amazon are people who just hate their life. And they're just looking for reasons to hate everybody else. Therefore, you will probably never get to 10 out of 10. By the way, have you noticed that the 1-star reviews on Amazon are almost never about the product? Almost never. It's usually about the delivery or how the delivery person was unfriendly or customer service was not great or somebody did not reply to their email request within 20 seconds. It's usually something like that. So, yeah, 10 out of 10 is quite utopian. But 8.9 out of 10 is hard enough. And really, truly, increasing customer satisfaction is usually one of the hardest things to do. It's often an arduous process that takes long and hard work. Because if your customers are not at least at an 8, there are reasons for that. And finding out those reasons can be very inconvenient. When I was starting out, I had customers that were not so satisfied, and I had to explore the fact that I am not good at some things. And I, like everybody else, have some character flaws. And these things influence customer satisfaction. So, yeah. And if you really want to fix that stuff, it's not always going to be pleasant. It wasn't for me, and it probably won't be for you. So keep in mind that this is probably, in most cases, going to be quite hard. But it's one of the most important things, because today's customer satisfaction is tomorrow's revenue, margin, and profit. How do you measure customer satisfaction? There are different ways. You can do it online, you can do it offline. Are you an online business? Then you're going to do online surveys. If you're selling to retail, you send your sales representatives and train them how they can ask meaningful questions. If you have a shop, you ask people who come in. Some companies use a 4-star system, Amazon uses a 5-star system. There are some companies that use a 6-star system, or you can use a scale from 0 to 10. Some use smileys. Find out which works best for you. Strategic project number 2, from the customer perspective, is win clients with high margins. Which customers bring you the highest margins? Because some customers may bring you a lot of revenue, but they negotiate rebates and then discounts on the rebated rebate, and it doesn't leave you with a lot of margin. And as controllers, we know what's the most important: margin. Not just revenue, margin is important. Margin is crucial. So, who would possibly be the clients that give you the highest margin? So of course, at first you analyze the customers that you have and see if you can draw any conclusions from that. And then keep tracking those margins. As I have talked about in another presentation, getting margins per customer, depending on the data management inside your company, is a medium complex thing. If you have a complete ERP system, if you have SAP, it's with Business Warehouse, it's not very difficult. But if you have other systems, other softwares, then it can be a little more complicated. But it is something that you should take the effort to find out. Customer lens, customer perspective project number 3, lower the refund rate below 0.3%. For some businesses, that is utopian. Like for clothing stores, you can absolutely forget that. With many other stores employing very generous refund policies, you can absolutely forget that. So find what is realistic for your business. With cookies, if you make them right, you pack them right, I think 0.3% is a realistic goal, depending on refund policy, but I think with cookies it can be done. With other commodities you can absolutely forget it. Think what is a realistic low refund rate for you. Or maybe you want to increase your refund rate. Maybe for you that would be a better strategy. Think about that. Customer perspective project number 4, get influencers. Get recommendations. Recommendation, when you can get it, is one of the cheapest and most effective forms of marketing. If you have somebody to whom people listen, you're going to sell, most likely. I, as a controller, was often recommended by the company's chartered accountant. When the chartered accountant said, hey, you want a controller? Take that Menikes guy. I was as good as in. And that happened quite a few times. That accountants, chartered accountants, said, hey, that Menikes guy, yeah, he's not so bad. He can do the job, so take him. That was an almost guaranteed in. And some other influencers too. You find out to whom do people listen in your business. From whom do people take recommendations and possibly change their buying decisions. The project is to contact potential influencers and negotiate with them. In that case, you will probably count the number of negotiations, but don't judge people based on the number of negotiations that they make. Think carefully who should we contact. We should not just have interviews for the sake of interviews. We should conduct interviews that make sense. So keep that in mind. Use common sense. Who do we pick as a potential influencer? And then do it and count with how many people have you negotiated and with how many have you reached terms that you find favorable. The next lens is the investor and finance perspective. the investors could be the business owners or investors from the outside. Sometimes, particularly here in Germany, we have a lot of businesses owned by Oriental people. And they often borrow money from relatives who had businesses in Germany before them and became rich. Now they're helping them get started. So a lot of uncles lend money to their nephews working in Germany. You could have venture capitalists, or what is often the case with German fast food chains and restaurants is that they are often funded by investments by their suppliers through commodities and equipment that the suppliers finance, and then they get a piece of the cake. At this point, there's another important caveat. Please really think if the measurements you are making actually help your business or not. In another presentation, I've talked about with how you harm your business with KPIs. And I'm going to tell you my favorite story about this. So this was about 10 years ago. There was an agency that kept calling me and saying, we need to meet in person. And every 3 months, a different agent from that agency would call me and say, we need to meet in person, this is very important. And I said, why is that so important? We haven't met in a long time. Well, if you're not willing to meet in person, we cannot give you any projects. I said, well, I have been meeting you in person every 6 months for years, and you couldn't get me projects then. While the other agencies, where I don't meet people in person, they get me projects all the time. So why is that so important? Even if we meet, you can't get me projects, so I'm no longer willing to meet. And they got really, really offended and plain aggressive. No, we have to meet, this is important. And if you're too stupid to see that. I'm like, well, you know, a few times I actually went. And what came of it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I kept getting my jobs from other agencies. And other recommendations. From those guys, zilch. So, a few years later, I found out why that was. Because those agents were run based on an internal KPI, number of meetings. Not meetings that make sense. No. Number of meetings. And if they could not have a minimum of 25 meetings a month, they got punished. They got sanctions. If they got over 30 meetings, they got a small reward. So they're desperate to increase the number of meetings, but neither the substance or the use of meetings. And now think, if you reward your employees for harming the company and punish them for bringing value to the company, what do you think are most people going to do, right? Even that agency had a few agents who were older and experienced, and they only made appointments that actually made sense and added value to the company. Those people were punished. And the other people who had a lot of meetings, annoyed a lot of people, and damaged the company's reputation, were rewarded. So please think if what you're measuring and what you are rewarding or sanctioning people by makes sense. Oh, just a tip.
The first strategic project from the finance perspective in our cookie company is monthly reporting of financial KPI. In some companies this is actually not done. I mean, this should be a standard. Accounting should just give standard reports to management, and if they have some special requirements for the reports, those should be added. If KPI are selected well, calculated accurately, and understood by readers, it can help assess the situation of the business. I have a few standard KPI that I suggest: cash flow, net profit ratio, fixed cost, how much is the fixed cost in relation to all cost, repayment potential for loans, and return on investment on capital. The measurement in this case is simple. The reports are either done or not, and possibly you can check how well management understands the reports. That's a little more difficult to measure precisely, but you should have an idea of how well management understands the reports, because there's quite a variety in the depth and accuracy of understanding by management. The second strategic project in the finance perspective here is to optimize interest by liquidity management. At the moment, as of summer 2022, this is not such a hot subject as it used to be in previous years, because you don't get much interest anywhere, you don't pay much interest anywhere, but some geniuses actually finance business transactions through their private credit card where they pay 18% interest. That maybe is not such a good idea. In any case, measure the interest that you pay and compare that to previous periods so you can check whether you have saved interest and how much. Number 3, from the finance perspective, is to get all employees conscious about margins. Why? Well, basic principle, it is easier for employees to support company goals when they know what the goals are. And solid margins are a good goal for pretty much any business, so show everyone, as accurately as it can be done in that case, what people's contribution to the margins is, or how their input relates to margins. And then agree on sub-goals in the sense of management by objectives. You can measure the margins over time if people get a consciousness about it. If enough employees get conscious about it, the margins will probably tend to get better. The next perspective is the employee perspective. And Richard Branson, our old friend, had a suggestion. Do not take care of the customers first, but of the employees. Then they take good care of the customers. Well, yes and no. Of course, maybe you have to train your employees how to take good care of the customers. And you need to maybe design processes that, well, you know, in a complex business, not all employees can learn every task. So you as leadership also have to design the overarching process and then teach people their role in it. But Richard is definitely right about if you treat your employees well in a good way, not in a way of spoiling them, but in an energizing and productive way, they will tend to satisfy the customers, which then brings more money.
The strategic project here is to keep key people, key employees on board. And one way you can do that is by supporting their development. In this case, in this business, it was found out the best way to keep people is to support their development, support their training, support their skill development.
So you incentivize people to stay by offering them support of their development. You can first discuss that with the key people, and then you can measure how many key players are leaving. Maybe you have other ideas what to measure. But definitely when you actually do help people develop, most people will tend to be grateful and give something back. Employee strategic project number 2, get employees involved in central mission and vision of the business. Some years ago, somebody posted a challenge for management, said, get your top and middle management together and let them write down the main strategic goals of the company. If you get 2 papers that say roughly the same, you are very lucky. In my experience, whenever people didn't do what they were supposed to do, it is because they didn't know what they're supposed to do, because nobody told them, or at least not in a way that they could understand. Again, it is easier for employees to support a strategy when they know what the strategy is. So all employees should know the central mission and vision of the business and know the main strategic projects, particularly the ones that they are part of. And during the BSc process, many employees should be involved. And the ones that are not directly involved should at least be informed. You can measure that sort of qualitatively by randomly asking employees about mission, vision, strategy, and goals, and then you make an assessment how well they have understood it. This is a bit difficult to quantify, but you could come up with a rating system, for example.
The fourth lens to look through is the process perspective. And one strategic project can be to shorten order processing time. Our customers might be looking very forward to our delivery, or they even need our delivery for their own production process. So if we take too long, they're not going to be as happy. The project goal here is to cut processing time in half. This may, depending on the situation and the business, may be a realistic or an unrealistic goal. Think about it, check what is right in your case. The project is to analyze and optimize the order processing. What is measured in the end is the time it takes to process an order. One central thing to be careful about when saving cost is when you're so concentrated on saving cost, maybe at some point it will cut into the quality. And if you have not so great quality, at some point this will influence customer satisfaction. So managing cost can mean lowering cost, and it can also mean spending more. I just personally hired another consultant for our company who costs more than the other consultants we've had, but I consider he's better and he's going to get us better results.
Second project in the process perspective is timely billing. Since these perspectives often flow into one another, this could also be argued that this belongs in the finance perspective, but in this case the focus is on the process. It's quite entertaining what I see there. Sometimes I've seen one company, they take 1.5 years from delivery to actually issuing the invoice, by which time 1% of the customers are dead and 15% have moved to other cities. So if you wait a long time, then good luck. The sooner the customers pay, the sooner we get the money. Duh. The sooner we receive liquidity. Project goal here is specific. All invoices are generated a maximum 3 days after delivery. Most modern businesses do it much quicker, but in this case, let's say 3 days is acceptable. The project is anyone delivering goods or services to clients are ordered to transmit the billing data to the billing department as quickly as possible. And here the execution is the result, so you monitor execution. Who actually does it and who doesn't, and who needs a little more encouragement.
The third and last strategic project in the process perspective is to roll out a knowledge management system. This can take many different forms. You could have experienced employees showing up to meetings and talking about their experiences. Or you could have, for example, a digital wiki. This business has decided on rolling out a digital wiki. It is used to enter knowledge and experiences. First, you measure the timely rollout of the wiki, and from time to time you monitor whether people are actively using it. And if they're not, you find out why and fix that. That's it, folks. I hope you got a lot out of this and you can use it to your benefit in your business. Have a better one.